So I'm glad you're back for the second video. This is all about how I put together my latest sculpture. It's not what you take, it's what you bring back. If you didn't watch the first video, because this is a two-part video, the first one was all about all the behind the scenes admin stuff. Now, this video right here is going to be about the actual design, putting it together, working with the fabricators, transporting it and installing it, the materials, all that good stuff. So a lot more visuals. All right, let's go. So the sculpture I was working on, the design all about the endless journey that we take in life, and the luggage, the bag you use to carry the things that we hold there. So when you look at the actual sculpture piece from far away, it is going to be like an infinity symbol, and then when you get closer, it sort of has this looping Mobius shape, and that's all about just like the endless journey, 24-hour nature of airports. Planes are always in the sky, someone's always trying to go to point A to point B, and then with the luggage, it's always universal. And also with the luggage, I wanted to make sure that it was upcycled so that when I'm working on it, I can actually have community contributions in it. So having that community element was one of the reasons why a lot of the committee loved my piece, because people are able to donate bags and luggage to the actual sculpture piece and not have it be fabricated out of plastic or, you know, fiberglass, or casted, anything like that. People are able to actually say at the airport, hey, that's my bag they use in the actual sculpture piece. So that element was really important, to use upcycled luggage from Colorado. And then other parts about this piece was the colors. The colors represent sunrise, sunset, because in Colorado we have a lot of sun. So even when it snows, like I can go out later in the day in shorts sometimes. Also with the looping shape, it kind of signifies the takeoff and landing. So it's kind of like you're taking off in day, landing at night, taking off night, landing in day. So that's the idea behind the main decisions when it comes to the aesthetics of this piece. And then when I wanted to add orbiting, floating elements around it, I wanted to make sure I could add other pieces of Colorado that really hone in on our personality. So that was the idea behind the design. So after signing the contract, that's when I got started collecting everything. And this was almost a 2-year process. You have to understand that any public art project takes a long time. And when you're working with the airport, it's just another layer of committees and bureaucracy and, you know, just red tape that you have to go through. So this process of collecting luggage to where we can actually start putting everything together was about 2 years. And during that process of collecting all the luggage, the way I did that was, rather than using a Google form, I actually used a website called Jotform. And Jotform is basically a website where you're able to build a form, but you're able to do a lot more with it, a ton of different functions, add a ton of different sort of elements to where you're able to really have people give you all the information, upload a ton of different types of files, and have it sort of beautifully displayed in a spreadsheet, so that when I go back and actually figure out, okay, who owns what bag, I'm able to know this person contributed this bag to the project. And with the Jotform, I was able to also collect a lot of information when it comes to stories behind their actual bag. So people are able to actually donate those stories. The way I got the information out there, or, you know, I wanted to gather your bags, was I went on different local news stations, as well as try to get into as many publications as possible to let people know I wanted to get their luggage, get their baggage, give me all your baggage, things like that. And that is how I got the word out in terms of, hey, you need to go to this forum and donate all your bags to me. So for the shape to really come together, I needed to collect a lot more bags than what I actually needed, so that I could have a choice on what bags go where. And the floating items around the sculpture, a lot of those were from Craigslist. I went on Craigslist because I needed very specific items, and the floating items were like a snowboard, a canteen, a Nikola Jokic jersey, a floating bear. I needed a telescope, a skateboard, jogging shoes, hiking boot, things like that. So I went on Craigslist to actually look for those specific items, and some of the items I actually had to make myself. So like the floating bear, I actually 3D printed that on my printer and then put it together because it was too big for just one solid print. I had to actually cut the print up, or the file up, into different sections, and then print all of those little pieces out, put it together, and then use Bondo, which is what you use for cars, to actually put a top coat on. And then I was able to actually have like a big floating bear the way I wanted to. And then with the Nikola Jokic jersey, I contacted Kroenke Sports, who owns the Denver Nuggets, and said, hey, this is the project that I'm working on. I would love to have like a Nikola Jokic jersey. And they were super excited excited about that. And because Kroenke Sports owns a ton of sports teams around Colorado, they also gave me a lot of their other sports teams baggage as well. So I was able to collect bags from the Colorado Mammoth, Avalanche, and the Rapids, our MLS team. And I did the same thing with the Broncos and with the Colorado Rockies. So I also grabbed a basketball, soccer ball, and a football from those different organizations. And I use those balls to make a mold and then casted footballs in like this hard foam. So I used those balls because I can't have regular balls on the sculpture piece because over time they'll deflate. So I actually had to make a mold of all of those different balls that I was given by the different sports teams and use that to cast like this hard foam. And I went to Reynolds Advanced Materials. If you've ever been to Reynolds Advanced Materials, they are a great place to get a lot of materials to fabricate anything that you're wanting to make in terms of props or different designs. So like a lot of people who do cosplay go to them to create that stuff. Any props you need for movies, theater, whatever, you can go to them and they can show you how to make casts and molds and sort of figure out how to carve it out of foam. So I went to them to basically do some of the floating item. And while I'm collecting bags, I'm also sending a sample of the weight of each bag, the style of each bag to the fabricators so that they know to send to the engineers what a lot of these bags kind of look like so that they know exactly how we can put this together. So like I made a PDF file of some of the samples of the bags that I was getting and some of the weights. But after all the different floating items were fabricated and all the bags were collected, that's when it gets into me, okay, now I'm ready to actually fabricate. Again, this process took about 2 years because in between while I'm collecting everything, I'm going through the preliminary design phase, the final design phase, the installation and safety plan phase, where I'm sort of telling the airport how I'm going to transport it, get it into the airport, install it. And that's really a lot on the fabricators who are the ones that have the knowledge to do this. So that's why I hired them, so that I don't have to be the one to physically do it. And while I'm actually collecting all the luggage and the items, I also had to make the draft of a maintenance manual on how the maintenance team, the janitorial team, will actually clean everything. But because it was a 2-year process, this was, you know, something that I worked on probably twice a week. And then once we got into the fabrication phase, that is when the fabricators Demerge bought all the different supplies and different items that we needed to actually fabricate everything. And we had to figure out how to put everything together for each bag. So we decided on using pink foam insulation that you can get at any Home Depot for housing, things like that. A lot of this stuff is fire resistant, so you're able to actually add this to different items and know that it won't be flammable or contribute to a fire. So we use that and some flame retardant wool as well for the softer bags. And for the coat on the bag to give it the color and everything, we wanted to add a gesso, acrylic gesso first, because that's super universal and can kind of stick to a lot of different materials, which a lot of luggage is made out of. And then we wanted to add a flame retardant coating called Contigo. Contigo allows for the substrate to be protected from flame or heat. So that layer that we put on top of it, basically if fire hits it, it starts to bubble up. So you can add this to cardboard and protect the cardboard from flame. So I put this on cardboard just to test it out, hit it with a blowtorch. It didn't go through the actual cardboard. So this product really works out really well. So we added the Contigo on top of the gesso, and then on top of that, that is when the spray paint comes. So I decided on using Montana Gold spray paint because it's color fast, it lasts a long time, it's something that I'm used to, and the colors I'm able to store for long periods of time. So if there is an incident, you know, 10-20 years from now, they're able to use that spray paint can, open it up, and get some of that paint to actually touch everything up. So that's why I use Montana Gold spray paint. And this is going to be the same process for pretty much all the floating items as well. So the gesso, the Contigo, and the spray paint will be those different layers that will sort of cover everything. So once we're in fabrication phase, that is when I had to take all the bags I was collecting in my basement and garage, put it in a U-Haul and deliver it to the fabrication studio, where Demerge was basically allowing me to use that space to fabricate everything with one of their lead fabricators. And the way we were working on this was they had the steel armature ready to go, and for me to do the composition, I basically started to prep a lot of the larger bags first, and we wanted to start with the top and the bottom, because the top and the bottom, I think I wanted the largest bags to be, because they have either the weight is directly on top of the actual armature or below the armature, and then more of the smaller bags on the side as we start to go smaller and smaller in size. So we worked from large bags to small bags, from top to bottom, and then on the sides. So this process was, I was prepping the bags, and Tori, the lead fabricator, basically when I saw a bag where I wanted it to be, she basically custom cut the extension plate as well as the knife plate, and basically helped me map out where a lot of these bags were going to be eventually. So we did that for about 4 days. So prepping the bags was me cutting everything that was unnecessary on the bag. So different straps, different linings on the inside, different metal pieces on the inside, different zipper handles, whatever would cause a problem and didn't need it to be there. I was there to basically cut everything off, and then prep the bag by drilling the 4 holes, as well as putting the connection plate in there with the foam in between the side of the bag and the connection plate, so it gives it like a good firm surface to squeeze against. And then after that, we could also add the wool, the flame retardant wool, in there as well. But this was the process we did for almost 4 or 5 days. Me stuffing, prepping the bags, getting them all ready, and then showing Tori where I wanted them on the actual armature, and she would go around welding pretty much everything. So she did the tack welding, basically putting on different connection points, but they weren't full weld, so if something needed to be moved, all she had to use was sort of like a sledgehammer to knock that connection plate off, or the extension plate off the armature, and we would be able to move it around, and we can kind of push it around just a little bit. But the tack welding was good enough just to get the placement of the composition that we wanted to. And once everything was where we needed it to be on the armature, and I felt good about it, I basically then mapped out the different where colors would end and start. So that was a process of me using string to throw it over the different areas, so that I could put dots on all the different bags that needed a certain color. So that is how I was able to color map everything. And when we take all the bags off, we would be able to know what color they were for the spray booth. And Tori was also able to map each extension plate with a number and coordinate that to the extension plate that was inside of the bag as well, and the orientation on, you know, how it was going to go on the actual armature in terms of direction. So it was a lot of mapping, it was a lot of coordinating when it comes to what bags were what. I also had luggage tags on the bags throughout the entire process as well, so that way I could also keep track on who owns what bag. So once the composition was final, that is when we took everything off of the armature and then start to prep it for the spray booth. And for the spray booth, we basically put it on racks. We added the gesso, and then we added the Contigo flame retardant coating, which is also white, so it's even like white on white. And then we had them on racks to where every Friday I could come in, paint the bags with the Montana Gold spray paint, their specific colors. So this went on for about, I would say, a month, because there was only a limited amount of room in the spray booth, and it takes about 3 to 4 days to prep every bag, and Demerge is off on Saturdays and Sundays, so I was only able to work on a couple different racks once a week. And while I was in the spray booth covering everything with colors and waiting for it to dry, I also scanned some of the bags so that I could use some of those bags in these shadow box prints I was creating for people to collect as well. So that was like a great process for me to go through in terms of scanning the bags and sort of documenting some of the bags in 3D space, so that I can use that for other projects as well. And every week, once I was finished with one of the racks in terms of the colors that I was putting on it and they were dry, Tori would methodically go and put them back onto the corresponding place on the armature. So as I was getting done with all the racks, you started to see these armatures get filled back up with this solid color on the bags, and that was really cool to see it build up over time and time to where then it was like a ready armature that we could then transport to the airport. So there were 6 different parts of the armature. That's how we transported everything, because we can't do this all at once or transport everything at once together. We had to separate it in 6 different parts and then transport it that way. And once we were finished putting all the bags back onto the armature, we had to wrap it up in saran wrap just to make sure it's protected from some of the different elements. We put those in a shipping container and then waited till after the holidays, because we have to wait to install, because we don't want to do it during the holiday season at the airport, because that is when everyone's super busy. And after the holidays, that is when we can use the trucks to transport it. So we used 2 trucks to transport it, and we went to Concourse B. They don't have an elevator or a way to get into the airport that can fit the different pieces of the sculpture. So we actually had to, I wouldn't say remove a window, but move a door in the concourse that kind of looked like a window. And we forklift everything into the airport, and we did those in 6 different sections. We also had to do that with a lot of their equipment that they were going to use to put everything together. So there was a lot of things that we forklifted into the airport. We wheeled everything down to the staging area where we were basically going to put everything back together. So the 6 different pieces we got stored the first day. They started to work on putting things back together the end of the first day or night, because we had to work from 8 p.m. to 5 a.m. overnight. So I'll say night. So first night we get everything in the airport. The second night is when we start putting everything back together, and during that time I'm also doing a lot of the touch-ups, because we're moving all the bags around. Sometimes you're going to get nicks and cracks in different places, and because you have to sort of fit your hand in tight spaces to put one of those nuts on to connect some of the bags, a lot of things will get dirty. So I actually had to have my paint there to do a ton of touch-ups while we were sort of putting things back together. And once the entire sculpture was together, they were on these gantries that were able to be wheeled around, and then we pushed it over and staged it underneath where we were going to hang it. And while half the team was putting all the pieces, the bags back together, another half of the fabrication team from Demurrage was in the ceiling tiles of the airport looking for the beams that we would basically be suspending from, and they were putting the hoist on and the clamps on, and then we attached the hoist to the different parts of the armature of the sculpture piece, and they hoisted it up. And this is one of my favorite parts, is seeing actually everything go up slowly. And I'm on the moving body escalator as it's going up, letting them know exactly whether it's even or not, or how high I want it to go, how low I want it to go. And we couldn't put it up too high because the sprinklers were there as well, so we can't have it too close to the sprinklers. So we had to put it a certain distance below the sprinklers, but we also had to make sure that no one could jump up and touch it. So it had to be in the perfect area to where, you know, nothing would affect it, or it couldn't affect anything else as well. The next night was all about putting the cables and attaching it to the sculpture piece, so that it was the final cables, and they could remove the hoist that they used to actually hoist everything up. And then they were also working on the floating items that would be around it, and that was also another probably a night and a half, 2 nights of work when it comes to the floating items, because they really have to make sure that they do it clean, so that you didn't see a lot of the holes that they were drilling in the actual ceiling tiles. So overall, this took about 5 nights to transport, bring into the airport, put back together, hoist up, and prep everything to where it was perfect on Saturday or Friday morning for visitors to come and check out. So that was a really cool process, and that's one of the reasons why I got a fabrication team to basically coordinate a lot of that stuff, because for me, I didn't want to have to be bothered with that stuff. I just wanted to focus strictly on the art, to where I didn't have to worry about the transportation, working with the airport on coordinating everything, working on insurance, working on the different pieces of equipment that we needed. So this was a great experience for me, just to be an artist and have the fabrication team do what they do. Even though they get most of the budget, because this was $450,000, they got $300,000 of this entire budget, but they were well worth it because, like I said, I didn't have to worry about too much of anything. And at the end of it, what was really cool is that once everything was installed, I automatically started getting pictures and tweets and people commenting on my social media and them sharing the actual sculpture piece. And it was about a week later when we actually had the unveiling for the actual sculpture. So that was really cool, just to have people recognize it because they were following the process and actually see it just pop up. And you don't realize like who's flying in your network or in your town until, you know, they send you a picture of them in front of the piece at the airport. So what was also fun was also seeing all the people that donated bags at the unveiling come through and see the bags they donated in the air in a public art piece that will stay there for almost forever, because this is a permanent art piece for the Denver International Airport. So that was really fun, just to have all those different stories tied to it. And when people learn more about the sculpture piece, they're going to go to a plaque that we created, see the plaque, see that QR code, go to the QR code, it sends you to the airport's website, and then I have another website where people are able to learn more about those stories. So people are able to read who donated bags and the stories about some of those different bags, because a lot of times people will have bags that are really sentimental from people that have passed away or people that's significant to them, or it's their bags because they were a flight attendant or they're ex-military and they traveled around with the bag a lot of times, and they want to sort of, you know, have a place where it's remembered in a landfill. So that was fun, seeing people be able to explore other people's stories, but also have their stories highlighted as well. So that was mainly the gist of this entire project and how everything came together. There's a lot more details in this entire process that I think I would want to talk about, but it's super in the clouds. It's like inside baseball. A lot of number crunching and sort of logistics and hurdles I had to get over, but this was really of the fun part of the actual project. A lot of challenges trying to get this thing done. Even the permitting part of it, I had to have a GC pull permits, so that was like an extra cost. And permits, you don't realize sometimes it can be expensive. This was about $3,000 in terms of permits I had to use, because it was a steel beam suspended over people. So I had to have a building construction permit for this entire process. And then I had to get inspections on the actual sculpture afterwards as well. So there's a lot of things that went into this that I really want to share, and hopefully you get a lot out of this, just in case you want to get into public art spaces. So hopefully this two-part video, just sharing a lot of the behind the scenes of this project, helped you out as well, so that you can go into the public art space and know a little bit more and not be blindsided sometimes about the cost or, you know, the process of everything. And if you can, definitely start applying for a lot of these projects, because before this I never did a really large public art project at all. The largest piece that I have that's suspended is 3 by 3 feet, and it's something that I put together myself, whereas this one had a ton of logistics, coordination, stakeholders involved, and this one was definitely a heavy haul, but it allows me to be able to apply for more projects in the future and be able to get on those short lists for these $1 million projects, because this one was a smaller budget, $450,000. The other 3 art projects at the airport that will be installed are 2.5 million, and the largest one is 4 million. So I'm trying to get to those levels so that I can actually you know, have some good income when doing public art projects like this. So hopefully, like I said, you like this video. If you didn't watch the first one, definitely watch the first one again as well, because I talk about the contracts and stuff like this. And I will try to keep making more videos as I get into these larger projects. And if you have any questions, put it in the comment section. I will try to address it in a video or directly into the comments myself. And then I'll see you next time. All right, peace.